Imagine this. Every day, dozens of people with flashy effects, catchy music, and even explosions are making their way into your home, whispering into your kid's ear that it's okay to make bad choices. And to you, they're strangers, but to your kids, they're intimate friends. Hi, I'm Jodie Sweetin, and welcome to Awkward Conversations, where each week we look to give parents practical advice on how to raise happy, healthy, substance-free kids who are empowered to make smart choices. And today we're tackling the hidden influence of social media stars on our children. From those who glamorize dangerous actions to influencers who promote healthy, substance-free lifestyles, these digital voices hold immense power. So how can we help our kids navigate this complex digital world and choose positive role models? Stay with us as we dive into influencer culture and learn how to guide our children towards making healthier choices. This is an episode you won't want to miss. And I'm very excited to be joined by Amy McCarthy, who is a senior clinical social worker at Boston Children's Hospital. We've done 4 seasons now of Awkward Conversations together, and it is a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Dr. Cooper Lawrence is a psychologist and a multiple Gracie Award-winning radio host. You've seen her on many TV shows like The Today Show, CNN, CBS, and E! Entertainment specials, talking about celebrity culture and how it impacts our world. She's the author of 7 books, including 2 bestsellers, Been There, Done That, Kept the Jewelry, and The Cult of Celebrity. These days, you can catch her on CBS News Radio, where she is syndicated across the country. We are so happy to have you. Welcome, Dr. Cooper.
Hey, guys.
Hey, how are you? Thank you so much for joining us today for an awkward conversation that we hope is not too awkward with you.
Most of my conversations are awkward, so buckle in.
I know my daughters are 16 and almost 14, and it is a huge piece of their life as far as, influencers that they follow, aesthetics that they want, all of these kinds of things. And I'd love to hear from you about some of your key findings from your research and work, related to the influence of media and celebrities on young people.
I love that you're living the life and you know exactly what I'm about to talk about because you're experiencing it day to day. The thing that, most parents don't want to be the uncool parent. They don't want to be like, put your phone down. What are you looking at? And that tends to be the biggest issue because parents have more of an influence over their kids than they think. They assume, well, they're teenagers, the celebrities and social media. But the truth is, it's really the parent that has the most influence. So I think that's really great we're having this conversation because I think we can really empower parents to do something about their kids who are on their screens all day long. The latest research, you're going to love this, Jodie. The latest research shows that the 2 places that you have to insist that your kids are not on their screens are in their bedrooms and at meal times. I know it sounds impossible, but those are the 2 places that are really linked to a lack of internet addiction. Those are the 2 most pivotal times that parents, you have to put your foot down and say, no screen time, no matter what the screen is.
That's hard.
Yeah.
I mean, I will.
Right.
I would. That is
Tough
very hard
news for the parents out there.
I'm really good at the mealtime one, but not so much at when they're kind of in their room. But they're also on FaceTime with their friends, and they're it is so hard as a parent to differentiate. Like, or what is the this is like good social interaction, but this one not so much.
Well, the FaceTime's fine. See, that's the difference. There's a very big difference between when kids, especially young kids and teenagers, are on FaceTime. They are not sublimating their relationships with their friends. In fact, they're enhancing them. What they're saying is, we're so close. I had such a great day with you, or you missed out on something. Let me share this with you. And FaceTime is actually quite positive. It's an opportunity for them to continue that the resource they have in that friendship. But it's social media you want to keep them off of. That's the big problem because social media is the Wild West because their brain is still developing.
Usually I can tell when my kids are on FaceTime because I can hear them shrieking and laughing and I'm like, oh, they're having a great time. Yeah. And then it's
quiet.
Very quiet when they're doing anything else.
Well, see, that's exactly it. I mean, you don't want to invade their privacy because that's a different type of relationship you're setting up with them. But I think it's okay to kind of listen in at the door or get a sense of what they're doing. I mean, you're the parent. It's up to you to know what your kid is doing, but there is something you can do that is separate and apart from that. And that thing is really instill empathy in them because all the research now is showing it's so interesting that the more empathetic a kid is, the less likely they're going to be influenced by celebrity culture on Instagram, on TikTok, that kind of thing. There's something about empathy, what it does to a developing brain, that it actually makes a kid go, yeah, that's their life and I got my life. So what you can do as a parent is just grow the empathy in your child. And it's really easy to do that. all you have to do is sit down with them and just watch a video they're into and say, well, what do you like about this? What do you think this person is experiencing? What would you do in that situation? And really put them in the shoes of the other people. And the more, it's almost like a muscle memory. The more you get the empathy muscle growing, the more protected they're going to be when you're not around, which is what you want.
I mean, I think we see it so much. There is such a lack of empathy and understanding on social media and on the internet. It's a big argument. Everyone's just kind of screaming at each other, and having that empathy and being able to understand, other human beings and their experiences is so important. And it is hard for kids to understand that, because they're so, kids are by nature and by development, they're just very in their world is their world, and teaching that empathy in a world like today where so much of it is it's just about intentionally being mean to each other sometimes. I find, and as particularly kids, it's easy to fall into that trap of picking on other kids and, the social media bullying too.
Right. Especially when you're online and you could say whatever you want because the consequences aren't immediate. Maybe they'd be later on once you got to school. But in the moment, you can get out your frustrations on a stranger on the internet so easily. I mean, adults do it all the time. That's why parents modeling behavior is also super important. But, it's really interesting with kids, because if you can arm your kid ahead of time to kind of protect themselves from that sort of narrative, they're not going to get involved with it in the first place, because they're going to see how harmful it is to their friends and people they care about, and ultimately them, because they don't want you mad at them, right? So they want to make sure. And it's such interesting. All this, it was like so many years ago that it was all about gratitude. Gratitude is super important. Now it's about empathy. And the fact that seems to have a protective factor, I think, is incredibly fascinating.
Oh, I find it super fascinating to link like this idea of individualization kind of in some way, like becoming your own person. Like you said, this is my life versus like that's somebody else's life on the internet. Like I don't need to like follow necessarily in their footsteps. Being your own person. We talked, later in the season, we'll talk a little bit about ego and like the impact of ego and resilience. And so this is such an exciting tool to think about to help build that, that individualization developmentally for teens.
Amy, I'm so glad you're saying this, because I was going to say next and you're leading me right into it. The other thing that's important for parents to understand is where their kids are developmentally. And these are the years they're developing their identity. So first of all, two studies we need to know about. One of them, there was a huge study done just last year where they found that Gen Z is more vulnerable to celebrity culture on social media because they grew up with social media like we didn't, or our parents' generation, and I mean, back in the day, I remember like, if you want to know about a celebrity, you had to like read an article in a magazine or hope there's an interview on TV or that kind of thing. Now it's constant. It's constantly feeding the beast. So kids are at an age developmentally where they're trying to figure out their identity. And there's a celebrity on there feeding that as well. So it forms a bond between the celebrity and the kid, and they start to really follow that celebrity. So you have to make sure the celebrities they're following are not problematic, because they post a lot of stuff, drinking, drugs, alcohol, partying. And their audiences are so young. And it makes the young audience think like, well, they're doing it. I guess I can give it a try. He says booze is cool. Maybe I'll give it a go, and I'm 13. So there's another study I wanted to tell you guys about where they found that very specific celebrities are out there glamorizing drugs and alcohol and all that. And, they're adults, but your kids are following them. Like a 13-year-old is looking, going, guess I'll give it a go, and it makes it all seem, they normalize it for kids who are still developing their identities. So if you're kind of bonding with a celebrity, you're like, that's the person I want to be. And if that's who they are, maybe I should give that a go.
See the side of like that, those celebrities being, famous and successful, and like, young people don't have the other side that might be that person's really struggling in their personal life or not doing as well. And so it kind of skews the influence for sure, I would imagine.
Well, that's everybody on social media. And that's why there have been so many books written, so many studies just over the past 3 years about how depression is higher, anxiety is higher. Because if you think about it, everybody posts their best day on social media. You're not going to post a day that you're having a bad hair day. You're not going to post a day you had a fight with your mother or you got a D in school. You're only going to post like, there's a reason why there's filters. There's filters to make you look better. So you're at home thinking, I've been feeling really anxious today, but there's all my friends and they're having so much fun.
Yeah, I like to consider myself fairly cool. And I am at a loss in a lot of ways in regards to social media and trends and influencers and micro trends and all of these things that are coming at our kids like just so fast. Oftentimes celebrities are singers or actors, or they have, creative outlet, but influencers really, that is, it's in the job title. They're there to influence people on social media. Do you see a difference in the reach and the impact that more traditional celebrities versus influencers have?
Jodie, I'm so glad you're parsing these two apart, because I think parents just think it's like one big category. Here's one of the main differences that at least the research shows. Influencers feel like something anybody can do. Anyone can be an influencer. You're look at the 5 and 10-year-olds that are doing unboxing videos. You don't have to be an actor. You don't need training. You really need a camera and a personality, which, I feel like I have that. Actors, musicians, anyone that does something for a living that requires a skill, that's very different. Whereas influencers, while they are very influential, I think a lot of kids feel like it's less about, I want to do what that influencer is telling me to do, more I want to be an influencer myself. I can do that myself. I personally, part of my dissertation, one of the studies I did was, this is interesting actually, we were looking at contingent self-worth, meaning like what your self-worth was contingent upon, like as a kid, like what influenced what your self-worth was. And we did a couple of throwaway questions because we didn't want the kids to know what we were asking them. So you do a couple of like little red herrings, like, look over here, I might be asking this. And we just, for the heck of it, asked like, what's the likelihood you think you're going to be famous one day? What's the likelihood you can be an influencer? Thinking that they were going to be like, oh yeah, I guess I can do it. That was our biggest finding. 82% of the kids we interviewed said that they were sure they were going to be famous. Oh, I'm definitely going to be famous one day in whatever career I choose. That was a very surprising finding. And that is also new because just like 20 years ago or before social media, that would have never been anyone's answer.
I think too, social media, like you were saying, it teaches us to value only the best, brightest, most flashy, most interesting things, when the reality of life is that it's just life you're going through, and learning to be content in those quote unquote boring times, or, when you're not traveling the world or on a luxurious beach or whatever. And that really applies to all of us, is that sure, it's easy to enjoy yourself and post all of that while you're on vacation, but going to the grocery store, like going to run daily errands, going to school, all of those things you need to be able to find joy and purpose and satisfaction in, that isn't contingent upon everyone applauding you for it.
Right. But if you think about, but where do people find love and attention from? Now the message is that the love and attention is from strangers on the internet rather than your own family or your own self-worth, which goes back to the empathy. So if you start feeling better about yourself and you kind of feel pretty confident as a younger kid, you're going to be less likely to desire fame as a goal.
Self-worth and dignity and kind of whole of the person, and getting that validation from yourself and from those around you versus the internet ties so much into helping prevent young people from misusing substances, because all of those factors are the things that help kind of keep them safe from, experimenting with things.
One thing that I have also noticed is not necessarily the influencers, but the influencing trends. There's ones that go viral because it's, it's doing something good. And then there's ones that go viral, like the standing on boxes, and you'd see people just completely breaking their legs, and
people have died.
People have died doing.
So Jodie, you're applying logic to this, thinking like, well, this looks like a stupid thing to do.
But I was that age. I would do stupid things. I still do stupid things. So
right, and it's easy to do stuff when your parents are not around. But here's something interesting. This may not seem related, but it really is. So there was a study published just this week that talks about parents now, young parents between the ages of 30 and 49, had the highest rates of loneliness and isolation than ever before. Parents feel like they're parenting by themselves alone. They don't have resources. They don't have other parents saying to them, this challenge is out there. Most parents don't even know those challenges are out there until it's too late. So I think it doesn't even start with talking to your kids. I think it starts with parents having communities where they talk to other parents, because everything you just said, I am sure there's a parent listening right now that thought, whoa, wait, what challenges? What's going on? There's challenges that are killing my kid? What? So I think that information it's ubiquitous to us because we're in pop culture. We read a lot of stuff, but most parents they're busy. They're busy parenting and trying to hold down a job and pay their bills. And that's why they feel so lonely and isolated. They don't have resources like this to say to them, your kid's doing stupid stuff on TikTok. So I think it's okay in that scenario. You have to constantly have a conversation with your kid about these things. I think just calling attention to it and letting the kid know that you are there and you are watching and you're listening it doesn't seem like it really has a lot of value, but it really does. Even just spending one day with your kid, just taking a day off of work or coming home from lunch and letting your kid know, you know what? I'm putting my stuff on hold. You're important. We're going to go have lunch today. We're going to go spend the day today. And you'll be surprised the stuff that'll come up that your kid will be like, did you hear about this? Or did you know about that? Just that one little tiny action makes their kid feel like, you know what? My mom's on my side. She's here for me no matter what. So it's twofold. It's parents needing other resources with other parents, letting them know what's going on. And then there's a kid knowing that no matter what, my mom she's going to stop work for a day and be with me. She's always there for me. I'm not alone in the world.
And I find that actually, we're talking about social media and kind of media in general, internet, and sometimes the dark side of that. But I think for parents who are struggling in that sense of feeling alone, there's actually a lot of positive resources for parents, on the internet or on social media sites to kind of at least make connection to like what's going on in my community or where else can I kind of connect to other parents in person, in vivo, if I want that experience. But I also think talking to your child's, school teacher, your pediatrician, to figure out where those groups are, can be essential. And I think, as parents are probably listening, being like, well, now you want me to go, figure out other things to go, help me. So to try to help make that a little bit easier, like those are some resources, to find those supports.
Yeah, absolutely. I think loneliness is a huge thing that just as a culture we're all dealing with right now. And that loneliness is really hard. And kids are super susceptible to it. They're susceptible to feeling alone. I remember being 12, 13, 14, 15, you're like, I am utterly alone and no one understands. And when you can find that reflected back to you on the internet, then it just reinforces that over and over. What we try and do on this show is really help parents figure out ways to interject themselves and relationships and bonding into, what modern parenting looks like, which is a constantly changing landscape and having lots of other influences on your kids. Welcome back to Awkward Conversations, and welcome to Season 5.
Saving lives means staying informed. Knowing the dangers of using fake prescription pills can help those you care about and keep our community safe. As a parent, educator, neighbor, or friend, we all play a role in building safe and healthy futures for ourselves and our loved ones. Do your part to take the first step today. Visit GetSmartAboutDrugs.com to access education, prevention, and treatment resources. Fake prescription pills laced with fentanyl are deadly. Be their protector. Be informed. Visit GetSmartAboutDrugs.com.
It's Season 5 of Awkward Conversations. Let's get into it. Are there things that we can help parents and young people really understand media literacy a little bit better? My kids come to me all the time with some ridiculous thing and they're like, but I saw it on a TikTok. I'm like, oh no, TikTok's not real.
Well, how often, let me ask both of you guys, how often do you guys talk to other parents that you know personally, and see if their experience mirrors yours, your friends' parents, that kind of thing? How often do you do that?
All the time. I have tons of group texts with various parents of my friends' kids, of my kids that have friends. I mean, I had a parenting podcast. Yeah, I talk about it a lot. I'm also very much, I think it's really important to talk about the things that maybe aren't going great. Instead of just the things that you're like, no, my kid's so good.
So I love that idea of having like a group text with other parents. I think that's advice that a lot of parents that feel isolated can do. Supporting healthy real life relationships with family and friends. That you might be really surprised that there might be like a cousin or somebody that's in your life that your kid is kind of growing up with, but not really. They could be closer to, and they could have a much more positive influence on them. And that's a really great place to start, because, sometimes, like, I go through this because I don't have kids, but I'm the fun aunt, and I'm the person that, like, if somebody doesn't want to have a conversation with their kid, they'll be like, can you talk to my daughter about X, Y, and Z? And I'm like, sure, no problem. I'm like, come on, cool aunt wants to talk to you about sex. Come here.
Yeah, exactly. Mine isn't going to listen to me on this. I'm tagging you in,
Exactly.
I mean, something that we've talked about a lot on this show is the idea of using your other parent resources and, handing it off sometimes when your kid or your 14-year-old is not going to listen to you about a particular topic. But maybe one of your best friends is the cool aunt, who is like tattooed and fun and whatever, but they're going to give your kid good advice. There have been many times that I've been like, hey, I need you to talk to, my kid about this issue or that issue and let me know how it goes, because I want my kids to know that they have a support system, that it's not just me, that it's me and other adults that care about them, about their well-being, and that also that I know that I might not be the person they always want to talk to, but that I want them to understand that a trusted adult is there for them.
Right. I mean, Jodie, that's really great, because if you think about it, kids are seeing things on the internet that they're like, should I be, but I can't talk to my mom about this because she might judge me or she might not understand. So if you have somebody that you actually can speak to and you let your kid know that these other people are resources, it's another way to show that your kid that you love them. I'm here for you. And if you don't want to talk to me about this weird thing you saw on the internet, you're wondering if you should be into it or not, Aunt Cooper's here for you. So I think that also shows love. And then the other thing I would say, modeling behavior is really tough. Because, we're of a generation that we're also on our phones and, doing stuff. Yeah, exactly. So but it has so much value. So if you can put down your own phone and maybe even share with your kids some of the stuff you're watching. Like I'm really into Mr. Beast, but the reason I'm into Mr. Beast is because he's so positive. He does a lot of really good positive stuff. So, that's something that you kind of share with your kid. Like, oh, let's watch him save 100 dogs. Let's watch him give away $30 million worth of groceries. I mean, things that are kind of, again, that go into the empathy space, but something that could communicate with them, which is YouTube. You know what I mean? It's sort of like in their language.
That's a really excellent point. And, one of the things that Amy and I have spoken about in previous episodes too is, that idea of what you permit, you promote. And, if you're watching content or shows, that have drug use in them or that have, things that might be topics that you need to talk about with your kids, using those moments that you're sharing media or whatever to actually have conversations about them, that's really the important step in it. When they do see it or when they're exposed to it, having the conversation about it and really helping them navigate what that looks like.
Yeah, well, one thing I was thinking of that is about kind of the engagement factor, that you just made me think of Dr. Cooper, is like you're watching maybe something like Mr. Beast, saving and rescuing, 100 dogs. And maybe you can also, say, hey, like we really like watching these videos. Maybe we can go do some volunteering together, like as a family, like at an animal shelter or, kind of make it come to, life in your real life,
right.
On that end of things. I think on the other side, yes, to be absolutely kind of aware of like, what are the things you're watching when your kids are in the room too? That like, are they hearing about like mommy whine o'clock like all the time? And,
right.
and being kind of cognizant of what are the messages that they're receiving. And then also though, like, being able to address when you hear them watching things or you're watching a movie all together and, drug use or substance use comes up, being able to follow up on that to say, what have you heard about that? What have what are you like, what are your friends kind of hearing about that or doing? And also being able to then, say, here's what I think about it. And, I think that, young people shouldn't use substances and maybe here's why, some of the brain science and some of the, information to kind of empower them with that knowledge.
That's brilliant, Amy. I mean, that's exactly what you took the words right out of my mouth, actually, because that's what we were talking about originally. That is how you instill empathy, is having the conversations. You can't protect your kid from any of that. It's in every single movie, TV show. I mean, even the stuff that's rated PG or G, there's always some like violence or something there that really pristine parent would be like, that's not okay. But it's out there. It's in the world. And your kid's going to experience it. It has to do with the conversations you have surrounding it and how it's impacting your child. And the only way you can know that is if you talk to that child. And remember, if you have 8 children, you've got 8 different personalities. Even though it's the same family, you're going to have 8 different kids with 8 different experiences. So you have to parent the child you have. Everything we just said to you may be like, none of this is right for my kid. Well, okay, then be aware of that. None of this is right for your kid. What is right for your kid? If you know your kid well enough, you know what they will and won't respond to. But you know what that starts with? Exactly what Amy was saying, a conversation. Sitting down with your kid and saying, how is this impacting you? What are you thinking when you hear this? I'm just trying to kind of get inside your head a little bit, kiddo.
Yeah. And I find questions or just sort of like offhanded, like, oh, hey, I heard such and such, well, not trying to give away that I'm trying to have a conversation or start some big thing,
Not play your card. You're not showing your cards.
Not showing my cards, but just, bringing something up or throwing it in conversation or listening to them and being like, hey, did you hear about, this thing that's going on? And, and again, we've talked about this before about having sort of the mom face of like listening when they're telling you things that may be things that you're surprised by, but wanting to engage and stay present and listen and not react or freak out. And I think that's so much of what our kids are exposed to in the world these days are things that make us go, oh my God, you can't do that. You can't see that. But that makes our kids go, oh, you don't get it. Like, you're so lame, right. And so having those conversations, we're like, look, I saw this, what do you think about it? And questions and not parenting, but having conversations. I think all kids respond much better to a conversation and questions than don't do this.
Yeah, the lecture.
Right.
Yeah.
You have to have an age-appropriate conversation, but just asking any question, it doesn't matter what it is, it says to your kid, I'm here, I'm listening, I care what you have, I care what you think, and I care what you have to say.
Dr. Cooper, I so much appreciate what you're saying here about parenting the child that you have and, getting to know the child that you have. And that takes a foundation of, bonding, relationship, spending time together, making space to know who they are, observe them in their kind of natural habitat, ask them questions, get to know them about their interests. And we're so busy, like as humans and individuals, like we've talked about, parenting is so hard. And so sometimes like that intentionality, like, or maybe what I should say is if you don't take the time to make that an intentional kind of practice and effort, it's so easy for us to say, of course I should do that. But it's also really easy for it to, kind of just pass us by, I think, too.
Right. And we all get busy and we get, used to our routines and sort of forget things. And what I always remind myself that we've talked about in this show over the last several seasons is it's not having 1 hour-long conversation. Mm-hmm, it's about having 61-minute conversations. So, it's about having those little moments I find to be, at least, again, with my kids, but I find most kids in general, they want to interact, but like a little. You know what I mean? Like, not too much. Like, I'll give you a little, but not too much.
And maybe in that way, like, it's just as important to show up to, like, your kid starring in the school play or to, like, their championship basketball game as it is to just engage with them for a couple minutes, like, at home, in a setting that's just, I love you for who you are, and it's not about all these other things and accomplishments.
That definitely feels more doable. If you're a parent that kind of feels like you're overwhelmed or your kid is going through a developmental phase or like they're finding a new identity because maybe they're moving into their teen years, you probably feel like, well, it was really great when you were 7. Now you're 13. I have no idea what to do. That is incredible advice. Just checking in, just being there and just having like you're right. Instead of an entire dissertation, just a 1-minute check-in conversation and continuing the relationship that you had previously.
Yeah, exactly. And, I know my kids get in the car and, it's a lot of times, how was your day? Fine. So I've started asking, like, did anything funny, silly, ridiculous, terrifying, hilarious happen today? And usually that'll trigger, like, maybe one brief little story. And then sometimes I still get not really. It was just a day. I'm like, okay, great. That's it. It's also knowing, I respect that, okay, that's the answer I'm going to get. And, like, I don't need to push you for it.
Yeah.
Because then, guess what? An hour later, when they do want to have a conversation, they're a lot more likely to come talk to you if you haven't been hammering in them and bugging them, about every little thing. They're like, oh, I actually have an open relationship where my mom trusts me and respects me, so I can talk to her about these things.
But I think also sharing stuff about your day with them, like something crazy or funny that happened to you, even if you don't talk about their day, you could be like, oh, listen to this crazy woman at work, what she said today about the sandwich I was eating. Just, something that's age appropriate, not, not something like too over the top, but just kind of sharing that, just making yourself into a human being, not just a parent. Because you are so multidimensional. And I think, again, that comes back to modeling behavior. So if you model that, you're like a cool, funny person that had like a crazy thing happen to you today, that could be the whole conversation. That could be it. And your kid went, okay, mom's a real person.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And it's so hard to make yourself seem like a real person to your kids sometimes.
Right. It doesn't happen until they're older and they realize how wrong you've been all these years.
Yeah, talking about sort of the difference between, celebrity and influencer, I find that sort of parasocial relationship that kids have with influencers tends to be a little deeper and a little more ingrained than it is maybe with your typical, celebrity or athlete or movie star or something.
There was a recent study that was done that looked at YouTubers and how they actually help, if it's the right YouTuber, obviously, they actually help kids feel less anxious in the world because they share a lot about their lives, more than celebrities do. There's something called the illusion of intimacy. And the illusion of intimacy is what usually happens on social media when a celebrity shares, something about their life, but you realize what they're sharing is something that, was vetted by a PR person. And yeah, you should share that story. You're selling a movie now, so make sure you share that cute story about what happened to you and your sister. And it all feels very, and kids are onto this. Like you can't BS them anymore. It all feels very, this story that's being shared is not very real. But YouTubers share very real, very personal things. And they share the bad stuff too, which, as we were saying earlier, on social media, everybody's having the perfect day. I look so good. Look at my hair. But YouTubers don't do that. They actually, their currency is in telling you a terrible thing that happened to them and this awful thing. And the kid is watching it going, this is really relatable. And it makes them feel actually more supported and less anxious, believe it or not. That's what the latest research is showing. So again, it comes down to not just social media has this like social media, but it's not this big monster. You've got to break it down into its parts. What specifically is your kid watching? Who are they watching? What information, what messages are they getting? You should know, who are they watching on YouTube? You should go watch those people for yourself and see what kind of messages they're giving your kid. What celebrities do they like on social media? What are those Instagram stories look like to you? So the message is different depending on who the celebrity is. There are some celebrities that are out there. Very interesting. Another new study about celebrities that turn off their comments. The minute they do that, that says to the viewer, I don't trust you anymore. I don't want to hear what you have to say. My message is more important than yours. So if you don't like what I'm saying, I'm shutting you down. That right there has been a real deal breaker for a lot of kids. The minute the comments are shut off, YouTubers never do that. They always keep that open because they want to have a reciprocal relationship.
I hear you talking a lot about almost like the vulnerability that, some of these social media influencers or YouTubers are kind of showing. And I'm wondering more about that connection that we've already talked about around empathy and vulnerability and kind of building kind of your sense of self like through that. Is there a connection to be found there, do you think?
Nailed it, girl. I'm telling you that so many of these empathy studies, it's amazing because empathy as this big, larger umbrella, they really have so many different branches that look at YouTubers, they look at your family, they look at teachers, they look at your friends, and they're looking at every aspect of empathy and seeing how that keeps kids off of drugs, off of alcohol, and how it protects them, what the protective factor is for empathy, and exactly what you just said, that it's that vulnerability that makes a kid feel empathy towards that person, and it bonds them, and it actually helps them, which is weird when you think about it, because it just says that social media isn't this negative monster all the time. It actually can be very helpful.
Yeah. And I'm one of the things having a social media presence and a decent following on Instagram and things. One of the things that I've always made really important for me is that I post pictures without filters. I will give my zit a name. I will put, not put any makeup on. I will not because that's the face that I love presenting to the world, but it's because we see so little of it on social media. And we especially see so little of it, like you were saying, from celebrities or actors or people who are well known. Everyone wants to present a really perfect, polished front. And I think it's really important for young people to see people who they idolize not always being perfect, not always looking perfect, not always being dressed perfectly, not always having perfect skin, not having the filter,
being human.
Being human, because I think those are the great parts of social media, is that connection and that sharing of humanity and that, we're all sort of going through this stuff. But it's the comparison that really is the divisiveness of this is better than, I'm worse than, and all of that, rather than what are we doing and going through together.
For sure.
But Jodie, you're the ultimate role model for this. I mean, you've shared so much about your life and your past, and you've shared the worst of your life and your past. And look at you now. I mean, you are the perfect role model for this conversation. That, you are somebody that has been as vulnerable as you could possibly be, and you've literally saved lives, and you continue to do that as a parent. And I know that, we don't all have that type of past, but we all have something in our past that makes us vulnerable, makes us feel like, God, I messed up so bad. But coming out of it is another thing that I think it's important for kids to see, because kids mess up all the time and they don't want to share that with you because they think you're judging them. They think, God, my mom expects me to be so perfect. I mean, I wrote a book called The Cult of Perfection, and it really is based on the fact that my mother always expected so much from me. And people would say, God, you do so much. Like, what's that about? And I would say, disappointed mother. Like, that's what it was.
You're like, yeah, it's a pathology, let me tell you.
Exactly. Let's get into that in another podcast. But the vulnerability that you have showed and continue to show, I think, is that, you brush by it like it's really, it's such a part of you now. But it really is something that's worth stopping and talking about, because I think that is what we all have. And that's the one piece of humanity that I think any parent can and should be sharing with their kid. Again, age appropriate, and parent the kid you have. But I think letting your kid know that not every day is roses and sunshine and rainbows. There are days that you're going to feel like you need something to get you through. Kids are more depressed than ever before. So getting to why they're depressed and what's making them depressed, and are their friends not being supportive? Only you can figure that. Only you can learn that from your kid.
One of the conversations that it comes up all of the time, obviously, in regards to parenting and social media is, what are the ethical responsibilities of these platforms, of social media influencers, of celebrities?
The sad thing is it took lawsuits for them to actually step up and say, we're here to be more than just a bank for ourselves. There were 44 major changes across all the platforms just in the past couple of years to improve safety and well-being. And again, that came because of lawsuits, but now they're realizing that they have to do something. So they have, like, Instagram announced that it filters comments considered to be bullying, for example. They're using AI a lot more to kind of go in and check for certain words that are inappropriate. Now you can go to your own pages and you can filter out words that you feel like are triggering or inappropriate. And remember, a trigger word is different for everybody. There might be a kid that something that would be a normal word that people would say, why would that trigger you? Why would teddy bears trigger you? Because I had a terrible experience with a teddy bear. You don't know. So you could filter out the word teddy bear. So we have those options now, but it comes down to parents actually using those and enacting them and educating themselves about the different things that they can do. This is more than just parental controls where you just put it on and go, block this channel. This is deeper than that. You can actually block certain words that are a problem for your child specifically.
And are there resources that parents can kind of seek out to support them with, kind of limiting the negative influences of social media on their children?
I mean, I think the best resource is the parent themselves. It really is, because again, I can give you websites that you can go to, and there's tons of them out there where they have lists of things and places you can go. But it really comes down to talking to other parents, understanding what's problematic for your child and what's not, and making sure that their social media and what they're looking at is, sort of positive and uplifting and healthy, rather than comments that are negative and bullying. It really is, it comes down to making those resources for yourself, culling together those resources that you feel are going to be the most useful. And for me, that's talking to other parents. That's seeing what the kids are doing and not doing that you may not know about. And the best parents are the ones that have like lots of kids and they're older. You know what I mean? Because then you can be like, oh, okay, so that's what's coming up for my kid. Got it. So yeah, so find those one or two families that have like, older kids who are already in high school and be like, okay, what did you guys do?
Give me the dirt. Yeah, exactly.
Right. So I think those are the better resources. And then also the people that interact with your child on a regular basis, whether it's their therapist or their teacher, or maybe they, after school do something. Those are the people that also know your child pretty well. And they may know things about your child that you don't know. So they are also going to be your resources more than a website.
Dr. Cooper, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been such a great conversation about really, parenting the child that you have and having those conversations. I would love to get just last thoughts, a little bit of advice that what you would give to parents to help them protect their kids from some of the negative influences that are out there.
I have 3 pieces of advice. First of all, stay informed. And that's not just informed about your kid, but informed about, what trends are, what's going on in social media, and is your kid partaking in it, and is it dangerous? So the more informed you stay, the more you can protect your child. Also, if you foster open dialogue, as we talked about earlier, just having a conversation, just saying, how's your day? Just letting them know that you're there for them. That open dialogue is important because if they're having a day, they feel like they need someone that they need to talk to, they should know that it's you, and you should let them know that it'll always be you. You're always there for them. And finally, lead by example. Now, we said earlier about how important it is to model behavior, but also lead by example in terms of sharing, your own vulnerabilities in an appropriate way, but also not being on your screen all day, having healthy relationships, doing things around them that are modeling the type of behaviors that you want them to employ as well.
Dr. Cooper, we'd love to hear where we can find you on perhaps social media, things that you have coming up and where we can get more of your fabulous advice.
Oh, well, thank you. Everywhere I'm at the Cooper Lawrence or just Cooper Lawrence because I got in early, so I got my own name because there are other Cooper Lawrences out there, by the way. But I work for CBS News Radio and I do regular segments for them. I do one called All Well and Good, where it's basically parenting advice on a regular basis. And I have a new book coming out that when it comes out, I'm going to bother you guys again to have me on the show when it's finally out, but it's about celebrity culture and its influence on parenting and children and how celebrity culture has changed over the years. It's a follow-up to my book, The Cult of Celebrity. And you can always find me on cooperlawrence.com.
Fabulous. Thank you so much.
And all of those resources and places to find Dr. Cooper will be in our show notes.
All right, thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Awkward Conversations. Make sure that you follow us so you can see all of our episodes talking about all the things parenting, awkward conversations, and all the ways that you can help build better relationships with your kids. That's it for today's episode of Awkward Conversations. I'm Jodie Sweetin. I'll see you next time. Your child, healthy, confident, and standing up for what's right. It's the ultimate dream for every parent, and the truth is, more and more, that dream is becoming a reality as kids across the country lead the charge in substance use prevention and sober movements. These young leaders aren't waiting for adults to set the tone. They're creating communities where being substance-free isn't just the safe choice, it's the strong and inspiring choice.
Red Ribbon, the longest-running drug awareness campaign in the United States, was started by young people in Calexico, California, at the high school where DEA Special Agent Camarena went to high school. That, to me, is an incredibly powerful statement about the value of youth being involved in drug education.
Don't let one choice, define the rest of your future. You might have worked up to a lot of things over these years, but just because you want to try something for the first time, you think it looks cool, your friends are doing it, don't let one choice, define that path. Stick to your values, stick to your goals, and trust it will work out in the end.
A lot of people, they start doing drugs, alcohol to deal with problems that they have in their life, whether that's anxiety, depression, all these negative emotions that they don't know how to deal with. So my biggest advice would be find a way to deal with those negative emotions or find an outlet that is more healthy.
We build through our program, age-appropriate, skill-appropriate development of youth over that long period of time to where they build up the personal resilience. They build up their own education so that they not only they have the moral, the physical, and the education to say no to drugs, but also they don't need them because they're living that healthy drug-free lifestyle.
Simple message to all the parents out there that prevention works best when it's ongoing and woven into daily life.
Make sure to check out getsmartaboutdrugs.com. Parents, caregivers, you can find so many resources of great information there about how to talk to your kids and make these conversations a little less awkward. A huge thank you to the Elks DAP, which is the largest all-volunteer nationwide drug awareness program, and also a huge thanks to the DEA for their outreach program and for making this possible.
The views, information, or opinions expressed during the Awkward Conversation series are solely those of the individuals, speakers, commentators, experts, and/or hosts involved, and do not necessarily reflect nor represent those of the production, associates, or broadcaster, or any of its employees. Production is not responsible and does not verify for accuracy any of the information contained in the series available for viewing. The primary purpose of this series is to educate and inform. This series does not constitute medical or other professional advice or services. This series is available for private, non-commercial use only. The production, broadcaster, or its channel cannot be held accountable for all or any views expressed during this program.